You know when you're listening to a true crime story that has an unbelievable plot twist that makes you stop in your tracks? That's what our podcast, People Are the Worst, brings you with each episode. I'm Rachel.
And I'm Rebecca. We're identical twins who love true crime cases that make you say, didn't see that coming, and we hate the people responsible for them. Listen to People Are the Worst now on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts.
Welcome to the Murder Diaries. I'm Natalie.
And I'm Paige. Make sure if you want to listen ad-free, you head over to patreon.com/murderdiariespod. And you can also catch us on YouTube now.
It takes a special kind of person to graduate from Fort Benning's Army Airborne School. And that's exactly the kind of guy Eric Nelams was. He was a real-life G.I. Joe, a walking, talking action figure with infantry training, who literally jumped out of helicopters and planes. Eric was an elite Army man and born leader that people throughout his life were instantly drawn to. And his older sister, Kathy, was his biggest fan. To this day, she remembers Eric's infectious smile, his charisma, and a magnetic personality that made fellow soldiers and friends want to be around him. Eric was truly the life of any party he attended. But all of that changed in the early morning hours of September 26, 2003, when Eric was shot to death in his own carport. Riddled with bullets, Eric lay dying next to the big Ram truck he loved so much. And as his wife Molly dialed 911, she tried to make sense of what had just happened. Who could have done such a thing to this brave, fun, and friendly man who served his country proudly? He was 32 years old and had so much more life to live. Why would anyone have any reason at all to murder Eric Nelams? This is his story.
Used to think it's in my head, but I'm walking with the dead.
Eric Bernard Nelams was born on June 10, 1971. He was the youngest of two children born to his mother, Annie. And Eric and his sister, Kathy, grew up in Columbus, Georgia. While Eric and Kathy were said to have been 2 of 15 siblings through other marriages, the brother and sister considered one another their true sibling. They had an inseparable bond that made them the best of friends. In her interview with Project Cold Case, Kathy said, "Being so close in age, we just kind of did life together." Eric's mother, Annie, described Eric as a smart, happy, and playful kid. He loved family gatherings and cookouts, played well with other neighborhood and school children, and was always respectful to adults. Kathy remembers her brother's smile, which is still evident in the childhood photos of Eric that she still has. She said that Eric carried that spirit with him through his entire life. He was the happy-go-lucky kind of person that the best of us wish we could be all the time. One thing was clear early on. Eric had a kind of gravitational pull. People wanted to be around him. Even as a little kid, Kathy remembers Eric strutting around, smile on his face, with his little chest stuck out, waving at anyone who would look his way. He was a natural people person and leader. He also loved his family. Family was everything to Eric. He was deeply devoted and wanted to make them proud, which is why he loved Christmas so much. It was a time when the entire family would gather together at his grandmother's house to eat, dance, and enjoy one another's company. It was Eric's favorite annual tradition, one he cherished dearly. Eric may have been small in stature compared to other kids, but he had a huge heart when it came to sports. As a kid, he played for a local community baseball team. Everyone thought he was so little, Kathy said of her brother. But once they saw him out there, they were in awe. He proved himself. He was also interested in electronics. Kathy remembers when they were children, they got an Atari game console. Eric was so fascinated by it that he took it apart to see how it worked from the inside out. Kathy walked in while he was doing that and told him he was going to get in deep trouble with their mother. But Eric was able to quickly and expertly put the Atari console back together, just like new. Another thing that eventually blossomed for Eric was his sharp sense of style. With a little help from Kathy, Eric was always wearing a well-tailored suit and matching hat. In high school, he wasn't put together at all, she said. I wanted him to dress more grown up. So Eric started laying out his clothes for school the night before, and Kathy would inspect his outfit and then iron it for him. After that, she said, he would carry himself with so much confidence. Even though he was short, he was the man. Eric graduated from Carver High School in the spring of 1989, after which he enrolled in classes at DeVry University in Atlanta, Georgia, with a focus in computers and electronics. Because Eric's family was struggling financially, they had to tighten their belts and reassess their budget. This meant no more DeVry for Eric, but he wasn't one to let an obstacle stand in his way.
Eric pivoted and joined the Army. This would mean training and a steady paycheck, and maybe, eventually, enough money to go back to school.
In the early years of his service, he was stationed at several Army bases: Fort Leonard Wood, Missouri, a base in Germany, Fort Benning, Georgia, and Fort Campbell, Kentucky. Eric also served in the Persian Gulf War. But it was during his time at Fort Benning when Eric really excelled. Not only did he become an expert marksman and receive many commendations, but he also became part of the elite Army Airborne School. If you haven't heard of it, Fort Benning is the premier training center for infantry personnel, and it's considered to be a top honor to be stationed and trained there. It was in Fort Benning where Eric's physical and mental resilience was tested to the absolute maximum, and also where his leadership skills were honed to a sharp edge. Kathy recalls that as a part of graduation, he and his fellow recruits were required to parachute from a plane. She was there the day it happened and thought to herself, wow, my brother is an awesome person. At this same ceremony, Eric was presented with his paratrooper beret. Kathy hugged him tightly after the ceremony and told him how brave and special he was to be part of such an elite squad. She was beaming with big sister pride that day. And as it had been his entire life up to that point, his fellow Army mates couldn't help but be pulled into Eric's orbit. They gravitated to him. Many people Eric served with would later reach out to his family just to tell them how much Eric meant to them. One of the great things about Eric being stationed at Fort Benning was his proximity to Kathy in nearby Columbus. At the time, Kathy was a single mom with 2 small children of her own. She worked nights at an emergency room and was often exhausted during the day. Knowing this, Eric made himself available to be around as much as possible to look after the kids. That speaks to his character, Kathy said, because I didn't have to ask him for help. He just did it automatically. Eric had a close relationship with Kathy's kids. He was happy to comfort them when they cried, feed them, and even change diapers. And Eric especially bonded with Kathy's daughter, Takia. Kathy thinks it was because Takia was a girl and needed a little more TLC than the boys. For Takia, Eric was more of a father figure than an uncle. He became a key person in her life when she was young. She would later describe Eric this way. He was a positive role model and father figure to me. He always showed up for us and was very involved. Eric was there for team softball games, family barbecues, and trips to the water park. She also recalls how much Eric loved to dance. When they attended the wedding reception of a family member, she remembers him dancing the entire time. He even showed her a few moves as the family circled around. It's a memory that everyone cherishes. Kathy's son, Vincent, also considers Eric a father figure in his life. Vincent says he was the kind of person that always came through for you when you needed him. He was always just a good person, Vincent said. To this day, Vincent tries to emulate him in every way, to walk in his footsteps and be a good person who's there for others. After his time in the Army, Eric worked as a forklift driver in Kodak Polychrome in Columbus, Georgia. He married twice with his first marriage in 1994. He and his first wife had 1 son together before divorcing in 1999. Their son remained with his father, and Eric saw him as much as possible. Vincent recalls traveling with Eric from Georgia to Kentucky to see his son. the road trips, the McDonald's stops, and all the fun along the way each time. Eric and his second wife, Molly Jones, settled in Phenix City, Alabama. She had 2 children of her own from a previous relationship, and Eric and this newly ready-made family eventually settled into a cul-de-sac home in the Carpenter's Way subdivision at 2300 Level Court. And it was outside this home that a nightmare unfolded at around 5:30 a.m. on September 26, 2003. It all happened in an instant. Eric stepped out of his home into the early morning chill of that autumn day, and as he crossed the carport, someone shot him multiple times. He didn't even make it to his truck. Molly called 911, and it wasn't long before police were on the scene outside their home, where Eric was pronounced dead. Molly never contacted Eric's family. Instead, a classmate of Eric's cousin told her the terrible news, and the cousin's mom contacted her sister Annie, Eric's mom. She told her he'd been shot but didn't disclose he was deceased. "At first, I didn't believe it," Annie said. "But as I made my way to the house, I felt something was wrong. There was a deep hurt in my heart. When she arrived, Eric was still lying in the driveway. He was my baby, my only son," she said. "It hurt me, his sister, and his son." The police designated the carport a crime scene and immediately began investigating Eric's murder. They collected multiple items that they deemed evidence, including bullet casings and latent prints that they found on Eric's truck. Investigators also noticed that Eric's belongings, the ones he brought with him on his way out to his truck, were still there. Thus, robbery was soon ruled out per PCPD. When they canvassed the neighborhood for witnesses, police found one. A woman who said she saw 2 men involved. She was able to give police the suspect's body types, clothing, and overall appearance. She also witnessed the suspects running to a black car after the shooting.
This didn't give the police much to go on in terms of a motive for the shooting, but Eric's family had their own ideas about who might have been responsible for his murder.
Now, Eric had known a person called Eric Cowling since elementary school, who he referred to by his nickname DD. And since Eric Nelams and Eric Cowling both share the same first name, to avoid confusion, we'll also refer to Eric Cowling as DD from here on. Eric and Kathy and DD grew up on the same street and attended the same school through high school. They spent time at their respective family gatherings and had a pretty tight relationship through the years. DD would eventually marry his wife, Stephanie. And because of the bond he shared with DD, Eric would become friends with Stephanie as well. But by the year 2000, something had changed with DD and Stephanie. They began cooking up a highly illegal embezzlement scheme to defraud 2 transportation companies that Stephanie had worked at, Excel Direct Incorporated and DHL. The idea was that Stephanie and DD would establish a third party as a vendor for both companies that they could create fictitious freight bills for. In the end, Stephanie, DD, and the third party would split the stolen funds, with the Cowlings getting the majority of the money and the third party receiving a smaller amount for their limited role in the embezzlement. It was DD who approached Eric about playing the part of that third party vendor. It's unclear to everyone who knew Eric why he would agree to this extremely risky embezzlement plan, but he did. Maybe he was enticed by the lavish lifestyle that DD and Stephanie were living. Eric wasn't exactly well off at the time. He and his family had bills, drove used cars, and were in debt. And his job wasn't exactly covering expenses. So it was a struggle for Eric to keep up with everything he owed. It's the consensus of his family that he likely got involved to help his family out financially. Without getting too deep in the weeds, this is the basic gist of DD and Stephanie's embezzlement scheme. While working at DHL, Stephanie circumvented an automatic payment system and approved and initiated payments manually to Eric. The work for which Stephanie authorized payments was actually performed by another company and not Eric. She then faxed the invoices to the accounts payable department for processing. But it wasn't long before DHL noticed the suspicious payment history. and they informed Excel that they too might be a victim of fraud. An audit was performed, at which time it was discovered the payments were being made to an unknown vendor. Stephanie was questioned about this unknown vendor and asked to produce job invoices. She said she would need to reference paperwork to get to the bottom of the issue, but left work shortly after that and never returned. Once Stephanie realized that DHS was on to her defrauding scheme, she and Dee Dee met with Eric and his wife Molly on September 23rd to, quote, get on the same page. This was a basic info dump for Eric before they were all likely interviewed by DHL security personnel. It was during this meeting that Stephanie gave Eric 2 documents. The freight bill in the amount of $2,900 in Eric's name and signed by Stephanie, and a document in Stephanie's handwriting containing trucking and billing language. Basically a cheat sheet for Eric that contained information about DHL that a vendor supplier would know, as well as key contacts within the DHL organization. Also, during this meeting, Stephanie urged Eric to accept the blame for the fraud. But of course, Eric resisted. And after this meeting, Eric told Kathy everything. At this time, Stephanie had no idea that DHL called Excel and spoke to her former supervisor, Linda Beth. DHL told Linda all about the fraud and Stephanie's involvement, which, up to this point, Excel hadn't suspected Stephanie of. But after an internal investigation, Linda found evidence of Stephanie creating fictitious paperwork using Excel's computer system. Instead of billing at the time a freight load was shipped, Stephanie billed after invoices were received to avoid creating a manifest that could be checked off. She would later submit invoices on behalf of Eric claiming delivery of items for which orders had been canceled before shipment. In total, Stephanie defrauded DHL and Excel for more than $450,000. It was almost immediately clear to Eric's family that Eric had been killed because of his involvement in the defrauding scheme. But the police didn't connect the dots. In fact, they never looked into DHL or Excel and never connected Stephanie and Dee Dee to Eric's murder. Even with some cursory investigating, the police would have learned that Stephanie and Dee Dee, who lived in Atlanta, had been in Phenix City the day of the shooting. But Eric's murder case had been mismanaged from the beginning. One example of this is that a different agency was investigating Stephanie and Dee Dee Cowling's fraud case, while Phenix City Police investigated Eric's shooting. And neither of these agencies were talking to one another and comparing notes. Another point of frustration for Eric's family was when the fraud investigators searched Stephanie and Dee Dee Cowling's home. They found a gun, but failed to dust the weapon for fingerprints or even do a ballistic test on it. Their only interest was in the white-collar crimes that the Cowlings had committed, and therefore never saw a reason to connect the weapon as a possible piece of evidence in Eric's murder. It's a missed opportunity that very well might have solved the crime.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Every year, as we say goodbye to the past 12 months and hello to the new year, we promise ourselves and loved ones that at the start of the new year, it's finally time to meet that goal or start the business you've been dreaming about. Then time gets the best of us and we tell ourselves next year. Don't let that happen this time around. Make January 2026 the year you finally start the business you've been dreaming of with our trusted sponsor, Shopify. Shopify gives you everything you need to sell online and in person. Millions of entrepreneurs have already made this leap, from household names to first-time business owners just getting started. Shopify gives you all the tools to easily build your dream store. Choose from hundreds of beautiful templates that you can customize to match your brand. Setup is fast and easy with Shopify's built-in AI tools that write product descriptions and headlines and help you edit product photos. Marketing is built in too. Create email and social campaigns that reach customers wherever they scroll. As you grow, Shopify grows with you. Handle more orders, expand to new markets, and do it all from the same dashboard. In 2026, stop waiting and start selling with Shopify. Sign up for your $1 per month trial and start selling today at shopify.com/murderdiaries. Go to shopify.com/murderdiaries. That's shopify.com/murderdiaries. Hear your first this new year with Shopify by your side.
If you've been thinking about starting a GLP-1 weight loss journey, Ro makes it simple. With Ro, you get 100% online care, access to clinically proven FDA-approved medications, side effect management, dosing support, and more. And best of all, it's all from home. Ro also offers the first FDA-approved GLP-1 pill for weight loss at the lowest cost around. It uses the same weight loss ingredient as the shot with comparable results, helping patients lose an average of 14% of their body weight within a year. That's one daily pill designed to reduce cravings and help you feel fuller. The pill starts at $149 for the first dose and $299 a month for higher doses, plus the Ro Body membership. Membership is $45 for your first month and $145 monthly after, and includes unlimited provider messaging. Ro also offers brand name FDA-approved GLP-1s at the lowest cost, whether you use insurance or pay cash. Eligible patients can start treatment in as little as a week. If I had needed this product, it's what I'd use. Go to ro.co/diaries to see if you're eligible for the new GLP-1 pill on Ro. That's ro.co/diaries to get started on Ro. Go to ro.co/safety for box warning and full safety information about GLP-1 medications.
If you care about the seafood you eat, you need to know where it comes from. Wild Alaskan Company delivers 100% wild-caught, frozen right off the boat, perfectly portioned fish straight to your door, so you always know exactly where it comes from. That means no antibiotics, GMOs, or additives. Just clean, real fish that support healthy oceans and responsible fishing communities. Get seafood you can trust. Go to wildalaskan.com/wildpod for $35 off your first box of seafood today.
In addition to not investigating the DHL Excel fraud side of things, the Phenix City Police were also all but ignoring Eric's mother, Annie. She tried to tell them Eric's involvement in the embezzlement scheme, but the investigators seemed utterly uninterested in what she had to say.
The Cowlings would eventually face some kind of justice for their part in defrauding the two transportation companies. In May of 2006, a federal grand jury returned a 60-count indictment charging Stephanie and Dee Dee with conspiracy to commit wire and mail fraud, with multiple counts of mail fraud, wire fraud, and transporting checks taken by fraud in interstate commerce. They would both plead guilty to the conspiracy charge as a part of a plea deal. Stephanie was sentenced to 42 months in prison, while Dee Dee, who was determined to have played a lesser role in the crimes, received 36 months. At the sentencing hearings for Stephanie Cowling, the government presented witness testimony about the nature and scope of the Cowlings' embezzlement schemes. They argued that her crimes were, quote, sophisticated, and therefore she should receive a tougher sentence. And in the end, the judge agreed. And on top of her 42 months behind bars, she was ordered to pay $453,054.40 in restitution. Stephanie, on the other hand, filed an appeal for her tougher sentence, arguing that it wasn't, quote, sophisticated. But her sentence was affirmed by the court, which stated Stephanie Cowling's fraud scheme was complex and involved the use of her specialized knowledge of the business operations and the computer and bookkeeping systems at Excel and DHL in order to create and then hide the transactions. Considering the nature and scope of the embezzlement schemes, the magnitude of the amount of loss, almost $500,000, and given that Stephanie Cowling engaged in repeated fraudulent acts at two different companies for an extended period of time, the district court did not err in finding that Stephanie Cowling's conduct involved sophisticated means. Stephanie was released from prison in May of 2009, and her husband Dee Dee was released in September of 2009. In the years that have passed since Eric Nelams' murder, his family has conducted their own investigation of the shooting. Based on everything they have learned, they still firmly believe that Stephanie and Dee Dee were involved in his murder. And in a shocking twist to his case, rumors have circulated around Columbus, Georgia and Phenix City, Alabama, that Eric's wife, Molly, was involved in the murder as well. Eric's mother has spoken about this since he died. She said that before he was killed, Eric confided that he and Molly were having major issues and that he wanted a divorce. Eric said that he asked Molly to move out, and after she did, he had the locks changed. However, a week before his murder, Eric and Molly reconciled, and he allowed her to move back into their home. This sudden reconciliation puzzled Eric's family, and his mother Annie eventually suspected Molly of providing the killers with Eric's work schedule and daily routine. Annie once told the media, someone that knew Eric's schedule had to tell somebody else what time he comes out of the house to crank his truck up, because they were there before he came out the door. They were sitting on ready. According to the family, Molly knew about the embezzlement and that she was at the meeting with Stephanie and Dee Dee when they tried to get Eric to take the blame for the fraud. His mother believes that Molly participated in the planned murder of Eric because she didn't want to lose access to the money from the fraud. Because there was literally no progress being made by police in Eric's case, Kathy reached out to a private investigation group called Iris Investigative Strategies, which is comprised of retired law enforcement officers, forensic analysis experts, behavioral analyst experts, geoprofilers, and other investigative professionals. Even if Iris couldn't crack the case, Kathy was hoping for an unbiased opinion about what happened and someone who would do everything that could be done to get more answers about what happened to her brother. Iris was immediately interested in Eric's case. However, to proceed, they needed the Phenix City Police to provide them with Eric's case file. And since Phenix City was supposedly following an active lead, they denied Iris access to the case file. Kathy appealed the police department's decision and contacted the district attorney of Russell County and the captain in charge of the case, telling them that Iris was ready and willing to sign a non-disclosure agreement. But still, Phenix City denied the case file request.
No part of this makes any sense to Eric's family. Phenix City has a small police force with limited staff and resources. Why would they turn down help from an investigative agency with so many trusted experts? The family believes that Phenix City won't share the file because it will prove just how poorly they've investigated Eric's case throughout the years.
The family has tried to convince Phenix City Police that they weren't hiring Iris to find all the mistakes that have been made or to point fingers and place blame. By now, many of the people who were involved with Eric's initial investigation have moved on. The goal of using Iris is to try and find the person or people who are responsible for killing Eric. But the police have continued to put up barriers. Annie has provided multiple leads of her own, but the investigators say that her leads are hearsay, and they refuse to act on anything she has given them. Dealing with the Phenix City Police has been like talking to a brick wall, so says Eric's family. In 2024, the Phenix City Police told the Citizen of East Alabama that they were, quote, looking into two motives, white-collar crime and foul play. They added that there's reasonable suspicion of murder for hire. While the last known activity of the case was in March of 2024, Phenix City contends that the case is still open. They said, the Phenix City Police Department doesn't close homicide cases. They may go dormant, but until we solve the case, it stays open and active. We continue to talk to people who are willing to come forward. Eric has been dead for more than 2 decades now, and the lack of closure in his case, the absence of justice for his brutal shooting, has been more than frustrating for the family. With a police department that is not only doing little to solve his case, but also refusing help from any third-party investigative professionals, Eric's family truly feels stuck between a rock and a hard place. Unlike some cases where a victim's family and the police investigating the case stand united to find answers, it seems the exact opposite is true for Eric's case. Phenix City Police continue to stall and block their every move. They continue to treat Eric's family like the enemy. The case remains open. With no one arrested or convicted, Eric's family is desperate to find out who killed their son, brother, father. Says his mother, Annie, 2 decades later, we haven't even started to get over this. It's every day that I live with this hurt. A lot of people know what happened, The Phenix City Police Department has got to prove what I already know. I pray for his killers to come forward." Annie further stated, "My son didn't deserve to die like that. Your friend isn't always your friend. And you don't know when they're your enemy until it's too late." Despite all the setbacks in Eric's case, his family remains hopeful that justice will one day be served. They continue to put pressure on the Phenix City Police, hoping that will spur some much-needed momentum. Eric's sister Kathy is the most outspoken member of the family, and she actually helped us with this episode. She says she has nothing to lose. She's shown the police that they will not stop her from finding out what happened to Eric, that she's not going anywhere. She will continue to speak out and demand the justice Eric deserves. The family also continues to keep Eric's name in the public eye. They've launched a change.org petition asking Alabama Attorney General Steve Marshall to investigate Eric's case. Also, in the spring of 2025, they obtained a grant from the Higher Hope Foundation for an additional $5,000 to put toward their reward for anyone who can bring forward information that will solve Eric's case. The family has also managed to get multiple billboards donated toward their efforts. But the question remains, who killed Eric? The family continues to believe that someone hired his killers. They think the murder may have been planned to protect other people, not just the Cowlings, but other people who might have been involved. But it's clear to everyone that those closest to him were involved in his murder conspiracy. Vincent believes the police need to do more digging and make people uncomfortable enough until they have to tell the truth. Kathy says their pressure on the police hasn't come without fear of retaliation, mostly because it's been hard to tell the difference between friends and foes. They've had to look over their shoulder for so long. But she hopes Eric's killers have lived with their own fear, never knowing when the police or a new witness or a new lead will break the case wide open. And she wants people to remember who her brother was. Besides this one misstep in his life, Eric was an upstanding man. She wants people to focus on his goodness and to know that Eric no longer being in this world is a tremendous loss. If there's one good thing to come of this terrible crime, it's the legacy of Eric's character that lives on. His generosity, his heart, his born leadership. In fact, his children remain so inspired by the man they called their father that his son and his stepdaughter have followed in his footsteps by serving their country in the United States Army.
If you or someone you know have information about the murder of Eric Nelams, you can contact Alabama Crime Stoppers at 334-215-STOP. That's 334-215-7867. You can also contact the Phenix City Police Department at 334-448-2800. That's 334-448-2800. A $15,000 reward is being offered for the arrest and conviction of Eric's killer or killers.
Additionally, Eric's family asks that you stay up to date on the case at their social media channels. On Instagram, it's instagram.com/justice.for.eric.nelms. And on TikTok, it's tiktok.com/@justice.for.eric.nelms. Lastly, we want to extend a huge thank you to Eric's sister, Kathy, who worked with us on this case.
Make sure you follow us on all of our socials at The Murder Diaries Pod. We'll be back Monday with an episode of Unscripted and Tuesday with an episode of Docu-Files. And of course, again next Thursday with another case that needs your attention. Until then,
Stay safe.
bye.
If you've been thinking about starting a GLP-1 weight loss journey, Ro makes it simple. With Ro, you get 100% online care, access to clinically proven FDA-approved medications, side effect management, dosing support, and more. And best of all, it's all from home. Ro also offers the first FDA-approved GLP-1 pill for weight loss at the lowest cost around. It uses the same weight loss ingredient as the shot with comparable results, helping patients lose an average of 14% of their body weight within a year. That's one daily pill designed to reduce cravings and help you feel fuller. The pill starts at $149 for the first dose and $299 a month for higher doses, plus the Ro Body membership. Membership is $45 for your first month and $145 monthly after, and includes unlimited provider messaging. Ro also offers brand name FDA-approved GLP-1s at the lowest cost, whether you use insurance or pay cash. Eligible patients can start treatment in as little as a week. If I had needed this product, it's what I'd use. Go to ro.co/diaries to see if you're eligible for the new GLP-1 pill on Ro. That's ro.co/diaries to get started on Ro. Go to ro.co/safety for box warning and full safety information about GLP-1 medications.